City made of gray. He walks the old cobblestones like he invented the day. His coat cuts the cold like silence cuts a room. The candles at the table burn, but nobody moves. Too soon. He doesn't raise his voice, the room adjusts its ear. He doesn't draw his hand, just lets the meaning become clear. A deal signed in cigarette smoke and measured eye. Some men talk of power, he just watches and lets it lie. Doesn't run. He reads the weather, reads the sun, reads everyone before the morning names what yesterday begun. He's already standing where the next war will be won. The barman pours before he's asked. The driver kills the light. The councilman across the street will sleep uneasy tonight. He built his name in silence, letter by letter, year on year. Not the kind of name in headlines, the kind that men revere. His hands are cold and steady, and they've never held a pen without intending every word to outlive other men. There's photographs of nothing, there are ledgers with no lines, but somewhere in the empire runs a logic that refines. They asked the priest once, is that man a saint? The priest smiled thin and said, I know no man by that complaint. The city took his meaning like the river takes the rain and filed it under silence in the archive of the plain. War will be won. They'll write the date in copper on a door somewhere. They always do. But the door was already there. reclining at your table while you practice how to lie. The market men were moving weight and working borrowed names. I move with purpose, move with patience, moved inside their games. Until the games were mine to deal and mine to understand. And every card that mattered passed directly through my hand. Yeah, you think I rose? I didn't rise. I calculated, organized, saw the fault lines in the enterprise. Bricks and blood and borrowed time. That's the currency, that's the climb. Every empire starts the same. One man willing to own the blame. Bricks and blood, a city built on names. And mine is written permanent in flame. The rebel men made noise, the clever men made plans. But clever men will lose the men with disciplined demands. I move the pieces quietly, no speeches, no parade. Just one position after one until the debt was paid. The money's just a signal that a structure has been built. That something larger operates beneath the blaster and the guilt. You see the suits, the cars, the address, the respected face. You don't see the architecture that keeps everything in place. You think I won? I'm not finished. I'm reading futures no one else has even envisioned. Bricks and blood and borrowed time. That's the currency, that's the climb. Every empire starts the same. One man willing to own the blame. Bricks and blood, a city built on names. And mine is written permanent in flame. My father showed me cold water and a window at a dawn. He said, look at what is permanent once everything is gone. I looked, I didn't see the poverty, I saw the vertical. I saw what men with nothing built, when nothing's theoretical. Bricks and blood and borrowed time. That's the currency, that's the climb. Every empire starts the same. One man willing to own the blame. Bricks and blood, a city built on names. And mine is written permanent in flame. The meeting rooms are clean and white and hold no evidence. The conversation happened, yet no record makes it tense. 3 minutes standing, one agenda, no minutes taken down. By morning each returns to their legitimate renown. not a sound, it is a temperature. The way the room adjusts itself without a signature. The junior men feel something shifting, don't know what or why. The senior men smile carefully and let the subject die. There are rooms you'll never see, conversations no one's free to repeat. A word placed right at the proper time, quieter than law, but harder than crime. There are rooms you'll never find on any map or in any mind. And in those rooms, decisions settle like dust on the city where power is an unspoken trust. Commissioner by his Christian name and mood. He knows to judge by what he needs and when the need is rude. He doesn't own these people, ownership is much too crude. He simply understands the architecture of their gratitude. A favor never named remains available forever. A favor named in public is a chain dressed up in leather. He keeps his favors private, keeps his ledger in his mind. The most expensive thing he owns is what he leaves unsigned. There are rooms you'll never see, conversations no one's free to repeat. A word placed right at the proper time, quieter than law, but harder than crime. There are rooms you'll never find on any map or in any mind. And in those rooms, decisions settle like dust on the city where power is an unspoken trust. You want to understand how it works? Watch what doesn't happen. Watch who doesn't get arrested. Watch which story doesn't run. That is where the real authority lies, in the negative space. Gala, the box at the fight, the quiet donation, the late evening invite. He sits at the table where the city's face is shown and smiles like a man who already owns the stone. The photograph appears in papers once a year at most, always at the margin, never quite the host. The silhouette is standing in the crowd of proper men. The camera always wonders how we got there and by when. There are rooms you'll never see, conversations no one's free to repeat. A word placed right at the proper time, quieter than law, but harder than crime. There are rooms you'll never find on any map or in any mind. And in those rooms, decisions settle like dust on the city where power is an unspoken trust. We shook hands before there was anything to shake hands on. Before the money, before the men, before the empire's dawn. You stood beside me in the winter with no coat and no complaint. And I have never once forgotten what that silence makes a saint. Loyalty's not something old, it's something chosen in the cold. When every easier option has been clearly bought and sold, you chose the longer road and chose it knowing what it meant. And everything we've built since then is built on that first cent. Men like us don't say it loud, we don't perform it for a crowd. We say it once and once is law. Word given is a word before God. Men like us don't bow or break, we carry what the other cannot take. And when the ledger comes due at the end, the only wealth that matters is men. There were the years when nothing moved and everything was great, when every man with wisdom recommended walking away. You moved the weight when the weight was wrong, you kept the name when the name was song. And I owe you something no accounting can repay. I've seen men sell their brothers for a half step of advance. I've seen the smile that follows and the smallness in the stance. That's not the kind of man I built this empire to become. And you're the reason I remember where we started from. There are men who wear your colors when the colors are in fashion. There are men who call your name when the name returns a ration. And then there is the kind that walks into the fire first, not because they're reckless, but because they've already rehearsed. Men like us don't say it loud, we don't perform it for a crowd. We say it once and once is law. A word given is a word before God. Men like us don't bow or break, we carry what the other cannot take. And when the ledger comes due at the end, the only wealth that matters is men. Now the empire runs on trust, and trust runs on the few. The few run on the memory of everything we knew. And I would burn the whole construction down to the waterline before I'd let convenience take what makes this yours and mine. So when they come, and they will come, with offers dressed in principle and numbers dressed in sum, remember what we chose before there was a choice to name. Some things don't have a price because they can't be bought again. I've read 1,000 sets of eyes. It was in the pause before the answer, 3 beats long, precise. A man who has nothing to hide does not rehearse his calm. But you rehearsed yours so well, you nearly pulled the song. I noticed the car parked where no car should park. The whisper call conducted in deliberate dark. The way you asked about the shipment casual light. The way the asking came the morning after Tuesday night. I gave you years, I gave you name. I gave you shelter when you came in shame. And this is the return. The Judas Detail is never the kiss. It's the small consistency you finally miss. The alibi that holds too neat. The loyalty that runs too clean, too sweet. A man who means to wrong you never looks like he intends to. He looks exactly like a trusted friend, right up until the very end. Moved through hands I thought I calibrated, through channels I designed and built and quietly regulated. And somehow what was ours alone arrived on foreign ground, which means the leap began in rooms where only we were found. I didn't rage, I didn't show, I let the table breathe. I watched your hands, I watched the way you seem relieved. Relief is the betrayer's till the body drops his mask. When the man who built the trap begins to ask. You called them at 11:17. Don't tell me what was said. I know. I just want to understand. Was it money? Was it fear? Because fear I can respect. Men with fear are still men. But money. Money means I misread you from the start. The Judas Detail is never the kiss. It's the small consistency you'll finally miss. The alibi that holds too neat. The loyalty that runs too clean, too sweet. A man who means to wrong you never looks like he intends to. He looks exactly like a trusted friend, right up until the very end. I didn't expect, not the kind you speak of, not the kind that wrecks. A quiet, the kind that settles slow, the kind you carry forward without letting people know. I trusted you with things that trust cannot retrieve, and now those things exist inside a world I can't believe. You opened up a door that has no lock left on this side, so I closed the other doors and let your absence be my guide. I don't hate you. That would mean you still mattered enough to hate. What I feel is cleaner than that. It's the kind of clarity you only get when a thing finally confirms what you already knew. Every decision made in private has a public consequence. Every room that held your silence holds it in past tense. The men who made the plans with you will not be making plans, and everything you set in motion settles in your hands. what I built or what I chose, but I have watched the cost of choosing mountain people close. There are faces in the dark before the morning brings its name, and I have learned to live with them the way you live with rain. The accounting comes, not like a hammer, like a tide. Not the kind you argue with, not the kind you can hide. The accounting comes for every name you borrow and every door you close, for the convenient silence and the thing nobody knows. It comes without a notice, and it settles in the bone. The accounting always comes, and it always comes alone. A brother's gone, a friend is lost, a woman stopped believing. The men outside the window worked their hours without grieving. I watched them from the height I climbed and understand the view. The altitude is cold up here and everything is blue. The consequence is not the knife, the consequence is time. The way it strips the reasons from the architecture of a crime, until you're standing in the quiet with the plainest version of everything you traded for the thing you said you loved. My father died at 51. He died clean. I have never been sure whether that was failure or wisdom. Some days I think he knew something I'm still learning. Some days I think he simply did not want enough. I don't know which interpretation frightens me more. The accounting comes, not like a hammer, like a tide. Not the kind you argue with, not the kind you can hide. The accounting comes for every name you borrowed and every door you close, for the convenient silence and the thing nobody knows. It comes without a notice, and it settles in the bone. The accounting always comes, and it always comes alone. I have given things back that I didn't mean to give. I have paid in the currencies of how I choose to live. But the empire still stands and the empire still moves, and a man who owns his consequences still chooses how he proves that the cost was worth the structure, that the structure serves the name, that the name outlives the damage, that the damage isn't shame, just the price of the position, just the fare inside the game. fate of every outcome has been placed within my care. Power isn't volume and it isn't decorated. It isn't what you threaten, it's what's never been debated. When I speak, the question isn't whether men agree. The question is how quickly they adjust their memory. Before the forecast knows my name, and every player on this board already understands the game. The last quiet man, the first name on the deed, the one who built the ceiling off which every other man takes lead. Noisy ones, they rise and burn and fall. They mistake the applause of men for having men at call. There's a difference between the man that people praise and cheer and the man that people think about when the room goes clear. It's not a song, it's more like architecture. Something in the background of the city's composite texture. The older men pass it to their sons in careful conversation. The younger men discover it before they need translation. I am the last quiet man in a city full of loud. I don't perform my standing for the admiration of the crowd. I move like weather moves before the forecast knows my name, and every player on this board already understands the game. The last quiet man, the first name on the deed, the one who built the ceiling off which every other man takes lead. They asked if I was frightened once. I said of what? They said of losing everything. I said, that is the cut that separates the men who hold from men who simply held. I built this from the ground, and so the ground cannot be felled. This board already understands the game. The room is mine because I made it mine, not because anyone gave it to me, not because I fought for it, because I was the only one who understood what the room was actually for.
The house
house is large enough to lose a man inside at night. The staff retire by 9 and leave me with a light. A glass of something amber and the city far below. A kind of peace that only emptied men can know. The children are asleep in rooms I rarely enter now. The woman left with grace and I respected her somehow. You can't ask someone to love an empire's architecture. Can't ask warmth to live inside a permanent conjecture. Glass and smoke and the city underneath. A man alone with every choice he took beneath his teeth. You cannot know the things that knowing cost. And all the rooms I filled are somehow lost. Glass and smoke, everything I own. Glass and smoke, everything I've grown. This is the view from having everything. How close it looks to being alone. My son asked me today what I do for work. I told him I look after things. He said, what things? I said, the kind of things that look after you. He seemed satisfied with that. He's 7. By the time he's 17, he'll know the other answer. I don't know yet whether I want him to. The allies are professional and the professionals are all. The warmth is in the manner, not behind the protocol. A loyalty of interest is a loyalty with term. And a man who's built on interest is a man the interest turns. I have everything that power said that it would pay. I have everything the ambition asked for on the way. And I sit inside this largeness with a curiosity. If I were nothing, who would sit beside me? My mother used to say, the hardest thing to hold is not the thing that's heavy, but the thing that's cold. She meant me. I think she had the kindness not to say. I have inherited her silence and the cold and the gray. And smoke and the city underneath. A man alone with every choice he took beneath his teeth. You cannot know the things that knowing costs. And all the rooms I filled are somehow lost. Glass and smoke, everything I own. Glass and smoke, everything I've grown. This is the view from having everything. How close it looks to being alone. I am not looking for a remedy. I am not made for remedies. I am simply noting For the record, what the architecture of a life like mine costs to inhabit. The city doesn't care. It never did. That's why I love it. Calculation, a room that holds the final question of the situation. I've spent a life arriving at positions such as this, where the only wrong decision is deciding to dismiss. Have been costed and the consequences shown. And at the head, as always, there's only one chair filled, because in rooms like this there's only one decision willed. I've been here before. I will be precise. I will be cold and I will not ask for this twice. Is the one you take alone when the counsel's all been given and the room's been sent back home. When the choice has two sides, both of which will cost you blood. That's the only test of what a man is made of. Understood? Not the wars when you were winning, not the years when it was easy, but the morning when the weight of it could bring a lesser man to his knees. That's the final position, and this is mine. I didn't come this far to fold on principle or nerve. I didn't build this empire just to fail the final curve. The men who wanna break me have misread what I'm made of. They read the suit and read the silence. They haven't read the love. The love for what I built, the love for what it stands for. The love that makes a man commit to one last open door. A love they'll never understand because they never built from nothing. Never sat in empty rooms and turned nothing into something. There are three men I trust with this. One of them is here, one of them is dead, one of them is me. So we begin. The final position is the one you take alone. When the counsel's all been given and the room's been sent back home. When the choice has two sides, both of which will cost you blood. That's the only test of what a man is made of. Understood? Not the wars when you were winning, not the years when it was easy, reduce a man to his knees. That's the final position, and this is mine. Has been taken and the order has been placed. The city will wait tomorrow to a landscape rearranged. Some men will lose their positions and some positions will be held, and the name on the architecture of this empire will be spelled. My name, exactly as I spell it at the ending of this game. Because there is no ending, only chapters, only turns. And the man who understands the chapters never truly burns. I said, nothing that fits on a stone. Write it in the structure, write it in the men I train. Write it in the city where my practice and my name remain. Write it in the businesses that stand past my accounting. In the families made whole from what I built when it was mountain. In the younger men who learn from watching how a thing is done. When the thing is done with the understanding that it's never fully won. The name remains long after the man has stepped aside, long after the ceremony and the tide, long after they revise what they believe I was. The name remains inside the walls, because the walls exist because a man stood here, a man committed here, a man refused to trade the permanent for temporary fear. The name remains. The name remains. I have outlasted men who thought that they would outlast me. I have watched the institutions that were meant to set me free become the very structures that I quietly inform. Not out of vengeance, out of patience, and the long games form. The legacy is not the money, money is a medium, not the power. Power is the shape of the tedium. The legacy is what a man decides he's gonna mean to the world that comes behind him, the world that hasn't been. My grandmother kept a photograph above the mantelpiece. A man I never met in a uniform I didn't recognize. She said, that man is why we have the name we have. I was 8 years old. I didn't understand. Now I understand that I am that photograph for someone who has not been born yet. And I intend to be worthy of the frame. has stepped aside. Long after the ceremony and the tide, long after they revised what they believe I was, the name remains inside the walls, because the walls exist because a man stood here, a man committed here, a man refused to trade the permanent for temporary fear. The name remains. They will study this city one day. They will find the bones of what I built. They will argue about what it was, whether it was right, whether it was just. They will come to various conclusions. None of them will be entirely wrong. None of them will be entirely right. That is the nature of a life lived at the edges of what the law considers its own. But I can tell you, what I know with the certainty of everything I've witnessed, is that the people I protected are still protected. The family I built is still standing. The name I was given, I gave back something for it. That's all any man can do. Give something back for the name.